You're too.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We are matching this morning. Great.
Yes, I called your people.
Great. Very well organized. My people in my dingy room.
Yeah, me too.
Good morning. Good morning. How's it
It's
going?
great to have you on. Thank you so
Thank
much. Well, we all know what Amazon is, the corporate behemoth whose CEO is now a trillionaire and whose workers can't take a bathroom break without Alexa telling them how much money she is losing. Oh, but this year on Black Friday, we saw Amazon workers fight back. The Make Amazon Pay Coalition launched a new wave of organizing by a global coalition of warehouse workers and trade unionists and activists. And it's the first coalition with this kind of broad international scope. Natasha Lennard of the Intercept, who you see right here in this box over here, has been reporting on the Make Amazon Pay movement, and she's here today to tell us more. Natasha, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Before we talk about the strikes, talk about the current position Amazon and its CEO, Jeff Bezos, are in. What do we know about the kind of wealth Bezos is sitting on?
Well, I mean, there are a number of pretty startling statistics buzzing around social media recently, and rightfully so, because I mean, it's hardly new that Amazon is far more than a retailer. As you say, it's like a behemoth, a leviathan, the modern day East India Company, and should be considered like that, like an empire. And the task of addressing it is, a very serious anti-imperial task. But just to get a sense of how in this moment of mass unemployment, health crisis, devastation, decimation for so many people's lives, Bezos himself could have paid every single one of his around 900,000 workers a $105,000 bonus each this year. And he still would have been exactly as obscenely rich as he was before the pandemic started. So that's just to give you a sense of how
unbelievable.
How much money this corporation and its CEO have accrued during the pandemic alone. Their last quarter reported revenue, just the last quarter, was $96.1 billion. It's numbers that are just absolutely impossible to comprehend. And
we know what he's doing with that money. We know what he's not doing. He hasn't given anyone a raise. He's not giving out health insurance. What is he doing?
What he's doing, I believe, is just kind of shoring up his personal empire. And the company itself got some mainstream kind of business media publications praise when it announced that it would be giving its workers a $300 bonus. And that is its full-time staff workers in the US and the UK. Certainly doesn't account for all its workers, but $300 bonus after having had to work in just perilous proximity with each other in unsafe, unhygienic environments throughout this pandemic, and they get thrown $300 from $1 trillion leviathan. It's it's unconscionable.
I remember shopping at Amazon, or excuse me, at Whole Foods, but when the pandemic just started, and the staff there told me that they weren't allowed to wear masks because they didn't want to worry the people, even if they.
I mean, the list
in New York City.
Yeah, the list of cruelties, abuses, quotidian types of control and discipline that the company operates its workers under is, it's a really horrifying list. You mentioned the now pretty well-known horror story of workers urinating in bottles so as to not lose time on their entirely surveilled productivity rates. And when it comes to workers organizing and fighting back, Amazon has been at the forefront of ensuring precarity, making sure contracts are often 0 hour, non-stable work sites, union busting, surveilling and firing any workers who are found to be organizing and trying to create some collective safety together, especially in the US, where obviously anti-labor laws have crippled for so many decades the possibility of this kind of fight back. But, as the Make Amazon Pay campaign, the coalition makes clear, Amazon isn't just a problem in the US warehouses, which is the kind of nearest site of worker exploitation that, say, a US consumer would see, if see at all. But this is a global supply chain, and it's an international problem. And that means that any challenges to it, any efforts to rein it in, must indeed be internationalist in their nature. And that's incredibly difficult when you've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of workers, all in precarious positions, but all in a moment of economic crisis, often reliant on these jobs as the only game in town as the company takes over more and more of the retail market for everything.
Natasha, what are the demands of the Amazon workers who are organizing under this banner of Make Amazon Pay?
So the demands, if you just read them in a press release, right, like they look like a wish list. They're very optimistic and they make absolute sense. So ensuring that Amazon pays appropriate and robust taxes.
Well, that's nice. That's not even
would have been pretty
not even personal to them. That's sort of as a greater, a greater moral imperative to the society as a whole.
Right. And, they are well known for paying scant taxes. 2 years in a row in the US paid no federal taxes. Last year only paid 1.2% federal taxes. So that's a kind of easy goal. Other very clear demands. Most of the demands are very worker oriented. So permission to have unions, to enable that the unions work in a robust and effective way so that they're not just sort of unions by name only. So that includes the right to strike. What
company is going to give the right to strike to their workers?
This, I think there's an understanding from every activist, union, collective, politician who's involved in this coalition that, like any site of power, Bezos is not going to welcome the request and say, well, of course, please organize and be free. And here is a fair wage. So there's an understanding that there's going to have to be pressure put on the company in a very consistent way. There were the campaign, the coalition inaugurated itself on Black Friday, which makes sense, of course, huge day for Amazon, with a number of work stoppages, wildcat strikes, protests in Bangladesh. Workers kind of stood around, made a circle around one of the Amazon supplier buildings, holding Make Amazon Pay banners. Workers in Poland I spoke to engaged in rolling work stoppages throughout the day in various warehouses. There were smaller strike actions in the US. There were a pretty large 3-day strike engagement in Germany, where they do have stronger unions. So you saw the kind of embryonic phase of what it looks like to have coordinated worker action together. But again, it's all getting started, and these connections, these international connections, are just being built.
And it seems that if that's on the list, then people who are watching this, who are reporting on it, people in government, who have the possibility of strengthening unions and strengthening laws that support unions, that kind of pulls all of that into the movement. Yes,
right. And a lot of the aspects of the Make Amazon Pays policy platform, because they also put together a platform that looks in quite a nuanced detail at what kind of regulation, policy, and legislative precedents can indeed be deployed against Amazon all around the world, both in Asia and Europe, in the US too, looking at already existing antitrust laws, looking at already existing but often quashed or obfuscated regulations around workers' rights, around rights to organize, and urging that politicians in various locales and countries and nations actually put that regulation into play and insist on it. And it's not unheard of. The Amazon workers in France this year made had a number of incredible victories through sustained strike action. They have very robust unions there. And the Amazon operations in France temporarily shut down when a judge ruled that the Amazon workers had, in their absolute rights, the ability to organize with management what health and safety conditions were, and they were lacking. So you do see what can happen when you have strong unions and politicians and judges who are willing to follow the laws that are in place or uphold or instantiate good laws. This is difficult in this country, incredibly difficult.
What impact has the Trump administration had on Amazon specifically, but large corporations like Amazon? It seems that he's just removed any kind of rein or restriction on them to do as they want.
Certainly, it's only gotten worse under Trump. But you know what? I wouldn't. That's not how I would find the periodization of what's happened with Amazon, which is why I wouldn't be particularly calmed or relieved by the incoming presidency as relates to reining in empires like Amazon. Yes, there are potential legislative moves that will depend on action in Congress that could do a lot for workers. Protecting workers' rights to organize Act was a bill that passed through the House last year. Unsurprisingly, didn't move much in the Senate, but really pulls back decades of anti-labor laws. But the situation in America is that it's that dire. We really have to rip away decades and decades, far, far, far preceding Trump, of union busting and anti-labor laws, and that being a kind of standardized, normalized position.
And the tax code. Could we do something about the taxes?
Taxes. We might see a slightly better situation under Biden, and that's great. But obviously, for the workers pissing in bottles and needing fair pay and appropriate hours and time off and health and safety, Amazon paying its taxes is still a huge deal, but the workers need to be able to organize.
The only reason Amazon will be happy to pay the taxes is if they continue to make things like roads so that their minions can get to work. That's the one, right? They seem to be less, repulsed by taxes, I would imagine, than they are by actually paying a living wage.
Right. And I suppose this is why the internationalist lens is a really important one, because when you have organizing workers and legislators who are sympathetic, and there are sympathetic legislators. There was an open letter that got signed alongside with the launch of Make Amazon Pay, that 400 plus politicians from around the world signed it, from 30 countries, but including Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, people who, do want to stand with workers and take that to Congress, probably in the minority, even in the Democratic Party, but they deserve our support, and the workers certainly do.
Talk about how the mainstream media is talking about these strikes. I understand there is a strike going on in, is it Alabama, or one of our reddest, least worker-friendly states in the South? I haven't heard a thing about it except on my own show and, alternative sites like, yours and a few others.
Well, there have been some really exciting movements in terms of what workers are doing, in the Amazon workers are doing, and Alabama is particularly exciting because it's looking like a warehouse that has announced its plans to vote on unionization to the NLRB. That is, it would, if this continues and carries out, this would be the first unionized shop for Amazon in the US. And so that's a really big deal. And there's a push for it and organizing around it that doesn't make it unlikely at all, even against all the anti-union odds, and even in Alabama. And what's interesting about this warehouse is it's one of the newer ones. So Amazon is, this year and probably going forward on just a campaign of mega expansion. Some of the greatest paces of hiring in the last months that have ever happened in any corporation ever. And, with the Christmas period coming up, it's only going to escalate.
Christmas under COVID means you're ordering the gifts from Amazon. What else are you going to do?
Right. It's a really grim phrase to think that there can be like COVID winners, but they are. And the workers aren't necessarily. And a lot of people are being brought on really impermanent contracts and are cycling through these places. And that also makes organizing really hard. If workers stay for only a few months, for a year, it's hard to keep the kind of ongoing energies and every time there's a new worker coming in who's desperate for work in this economy, it's harder to necessarily meet someone where they're at and say, yes, you need this job, and it's the only job in town. In certain areas, somewhere like San Bernardino, Amazon is the company store, right? It employs 30,000 people in that area, and so it's hard to organize in those kind of environments, but people are. And, I really hope that Alabama sets a precedent and we can start seeing more and more unionized workshops, and every element of the Amazon supply chain is able to find union representation and organize together. And it's a really tall order. Right? Like there is a kind of like optimism of the will aspect to this, because, we haven't seen a company of this power in probably since the East India Company. So it will also
trade in slaves. I mean, I feel like there's a parallel here. Am I misremembering my history?
Oh, there was certainly the East India Company was certainly reliant on slave trade and moved through slave trade without question. So yeah, and there is, and just huge. What the other thing that is different, that is similar, and like makes the comparison not an absurdist one, is the level of resource extraction and labor exploitation. Amazon's footprint, carbon footprint, is the size of 2/3 of the world's countries' carbon footprints put together. So its ongoing existence as it is, which is only an expanding one, it is intolerable, whether you work at Amazon or not. Even for people who their only interaction with Amazon is, ordering some books at Christmas time and them getting there in 2 days. This will affect everyone, because we won't be able to breathe and live on this planet with Amazon's carbon footprint and resource extraction continuing as it does.
So you have found that mainstream media is talking about these strikes in a supportive manner, or?
Oh, sorry, I slightly got carried away and didn't answer the media question.
Okay.
So I've not seen a lot of it either. And I would say that the Black Friday is just the beginning, and I think we'll see larger actions in the US. And there was coverage of, say, the large scale strikes in Germany, but that was in Germany. Here, especially in the business press, I noted in the column I wrote one headline that I found pretty galling, which was that it was announced that Amazon would be paying $300 bonuses, big deal. And CNN Business put out this headline, which was, Amazon spends another $500 million on bonuses. Some of its workers are still going on strike. And that kind of still really rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh, yes, I could see why. Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love the way they distorted that. That is just vile.
It is vile. And I feel like,
there's an underlying racism in that, I think.
It is. And it's this idea of like, you should be so lucky for these handouts. And this is truly predominantly workers of color, who have lived in deep, health peril because of this company for this last year. And also, I think the numbers for a general reader can be really hard to pass when you see them all in front of you. So sure, 500 million in bonuses sounds like a
lot.
But you're talking about
how many people work there.
Over.
Right. Yeah. That's sickening.
And you're talking about a company that in one quarter made $96.1 billion. And a lot of the I really like the work that some data visualization people have done in recent years of really trying to show people the difference between 1 million and 1 billion, and trying to get people to get their heads around it, because only when you do that can you understand how absolutely pitiful it is that they were only giving out this small amount of money to their workers.
So if Jeff Bezos, or let's say there was some sort of, I don't know, law, for example, might be a thing that we could have here in the United States, much like war profiteering is supposed to be illegal, even though people do it every year of my existence. This has been going on. Perhaps pandemic profiteering, if we took the amount of money that he's getting, what could we have done with it?
Well, if you think that, nearly 1 million people could each be given, and this is just from Bezos's kind of personal accrual in the last 9 months. If you think that nearly 1 million people could each get $100,000, we could have done a lot. I mean, we would have, I think a kind of punitive tax on COVID winners is an absolutely excellent idea. And in fact, Argentina is implementing just such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything.
They could take that money and help with COVID. Train nurses quickly, buy additional, PPE. People are dying alone. I was reading the piece in the New York Times or in the Washington Post about the reporting about nurses. I don't understand why, if you had enough PPE that was very safe, someone's mother or sister or daughter couldn't sit with their wife, couldn't sit with them while they were dying if they were properly protected as well. So, there's a lot of things we could be doing to make even
pay workers
deaths better.
Just honestly, just give people money.
Give people money.
The money is there. We can see it. I mean, for one thing,
people are just going to go back to Amazon and spend it again. I don't see what the it's not like they're going to be at a loss. If people don't have money, I don't see how these corporations, at some point, isn't there going to be a tipping point where these large corporations just can't get any more from the
that's like Marx's presumption.
I'm still waiting for that. Yeah.
But turns out credit devastation, policing people, putting people in prisons, does still accumulate quite a lot of wealth for the wealthy. So, I don't think the collapse of Amazon will happen on its own. I think, it's going to be workers, and it's going to be workers supported by everyone who can support them, but specifically by putting pressure on both local and national government level to do that things that are often kind of technically on the books anyway. And look, you don't have to hate capitalism to want to rein in Amazon. I mean, I do hate capitalism, and I think Amazon is capitalism doing what it's supposed to do. It's not capitalism out of control. It is its logical extension. But you could love the market and still see that Amazon is a problem for a free market because it's a monopoly. So, even the kind of centrist conservatives in Congress should understand that even for their own ideologies, Amazon is a huge problem and needs to be broken up. And there are mechanisms by which that can happen.
Are there other labor organizations or other organizations, Black Lives Matter, any of these organizations coming together to support as allies the actions of, say, the people in Alabama or some of the other moves against Amazon?
Well, Make Amazon Pay is a pretty large coalition, and it includes some Black Lives Matter organizations. It includes Greenpeace, which is a pretty mainstream nonprofit, hardly radical, but a number of other organizations looking at the more environmental damaging side of things. So it's a pretty broad coalition of activists with a kind of centering of international labor.
And what should we be looking out for as these protests and strikes continues? And how can our viewers help support these workers?
Well, I think you should be looking out for any news around Make Amazon Pay. You can, follow their There's, a hashtag, you can follow that. And then just keeping an eye out for worker organizing. What's going to happen in Alabama, I think, will be interesting. When you're thinking of engagement with your representatives, you can call them and let them know about, the sort of legislation that Make Amazon Pay is pushing for, like the Right to Organize Act. And I think Protecting Workers' Right to Organize Act, when that comes up again. And so I think just keeping an eye on what the workers are doing and being attuned to that. Individual choices like boycotts are not nothing. Yanis Varoufakis called for a mass Amazon boycott. And sure, go for it. And that is it's certainly an ethical
Can't
decision.
hurt.
But it certainly can't hurt. But I think what people don't realize is that it's basically impossible to boycott Amazon because of Amazon Web Services. So much of your internet life is going through Amazon infrastructure, even if you're never going to Amazon.com. Because Amazon Web Services is a huge cloud hosting, mega structure. Mm-hmm. So, don't shop at Amazon, keep local bookstores alive, things like that. Bookshop.org, obviously better. And of course I'm saying that's wise and should be done. But we really do need support, worker organizing, wildcat strikes, the ability to strike, and the sort of legislation and regulations they're pushing for. Because just not shopping at Amazon won't do the trick, because Amazon is everywhere.
Natasha Lennard is a columnist at The Intercept and author of the book Being Numerous, Essays on Non-fascist Life. We should talk about that book sometime. Can you come back? We'll talk about the book itself.
I'll come back. It's coming on, paperback is coming out next May or something. So we can do that.
Excellent. Okay, we'll do that. Natasha, thank you so much. Follow Natasha Lennard on Twitter at Natasha Lennard. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Brianna. Be well. Bye.